The gavel struck the podium 3 times, each crack echoing through Snowridge Falls Town Hall like a death sentence. Lily Dawson stood frozen in the back row, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and fury. Around her, neighbors whispered frantically, their faces pale beneath the warm glow of the Christmas lights strung across the ceiling. Someone's child started crying. Mrs. Patterson clutched her husband's arm so tightly her knuckles turned white. At the front of the room, a man in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Lily's entire bakery inventory stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Blake Harrison. The name had been whispered through town for 3 days now, ever since his convoy of black SUVs rolled down Main Street like an occupying force. Billionaire, corporate raider, the man who bought entire towns and dismantled them piece by piece. And now he owned Christmas. The Snowridge Falls Christmas Festival, his lawyer announced, adjusting wire-rimmed glasses, along with all associated properties, permits, and commercial rights, has been legally acquired by Harrison Enterprises. Effective immediately, all scheduled events are cancelled. The town square will be closed for redevelopment starting Monday. The word redevelopment hung in the air like poison gas. Lily's hands trembled. Dawson's Sweet Haven, her bakery, generated 60% of its annual revenue during the 3-week festival. The same was true for almost every shop on Main Street. Without Christmas, Snowridge Falls would become another ghost town by spring, just another casualty of progress and profit margins. She pushed through the crowd toward the front, her boots loud against the hardwood floor. People parted instinctively, recognizing the fire in her eyes. Lily Dawson didn't back down from anything, not snowstorms that knocked out power for a week, not the time Tommy Green's truck crashed through her front window, and certainly not from some cold-hearted billionaire who thought he could steal the soul of her town. "Excuse me," her voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "Mr. Harrison, is it?" Blake Harrison turned slowly, and for the first time Lily got a clear look at him. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe late 30s, with sharp features that looked carved from ice. His eyes were gray, the color of winter storms, and when they settled on her, she felt their weight like a physical thing. Handsome in the way that dangerous things often were, completely untouchable. Yes, his tone suggested he was already bored. "I'm Lily Dawson. I own the bakery on Main Street." She climbed the 3 steps to the stage, ignoring the lawyer's protests. "And I want to know what gives you the right to come into our town and destroy everything we've built." Something flickered across Blake's face, too quick to name. "I have legal ownership, Miss Dawson, that gives me every right." "Legal doesn't mean moral. Morality doesn't pay mortgages." He turned away dismissively. "If you have concerns about your business, submit them in writing to my legal team. We are done here." The casual cruelty of it, the utter indifference, ignited something nuclear in Lily's chest. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. His security team moved immediately, but Blake raised one hand, stopping them. "You can't just cancel Christmas," Lily said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "Do you understand what you're doing? The Hendersons just had twins, and Sarah was counting on festival sales to cover their medical bills. Old Man Chen's hardware store barely survived the pandemic. The elementary school uses festival donations to fund their music program. This isn't just some property transaction. These are people's lives." Blake looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. Up close, she could see the absolute absence of warmth in his eyes. Whatever made people human, whatever made them capable of empathy or joy, seemed to have been surgically removed from Blake Harrison. "Then perhaps those people should have built more sustainable business models," he said quietly. "I'm not responsible for an entire town's poor financial planning." Lily released his arm like she'd been burned. "You're a monster." "I'm a businessman, and this conversation is over." He walked past her, his security team forming a protective barrier. The lawyer gathered his papers with practiced efficiency. Within 2 minutes, Blake Harrison and his entire entourage had left the building, leaving behind a room full of devastated people and the hollow echo of dreams dying. Lily stood on the stage, breathing hard, aware that everyone was looking at her. The heart of Christmas in Snowridge Falls, they called her. The woman who organized the festival volunteers, who baked cookies for every school event, who never let the town's spirit dim even during the hardest winters. She had to say something. They were waiting for her to fix this. "We're not giving up," she announced, her voice stronger than she felt. "Christmas doesn't belong to Blake Harrison, no matter what his lawyers say. It belongs to us, to every person in this room, every family, every memory we've created together. So here's what we're going to do." She laid out a plan even as she invented it. Small, independent events, decorations on private property where Harrison couldn't touch them, a volunteer-run market in the church parking lot. It was scrappy and desperate and probably wouldn't be enough, but it was something. It was hope. As people filed out, talking in hushed but slightly less defeated tones, Mayor Griffin approached Lily. He was a good man, 65 and tired, who'd served Snowridge Falls for 2 decades. "That was brave, Lily. Stupid, but brave. Someone had to stand up to him. Blake Harrison isn't someone you want as an enemy. I made some calls after we heard he'd bought the festival rights. This man has destroyed bigger towns than ours without breaking a sweat. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't compromise. He wins, and everyone else loses." Lily met his worried gaze. "Then we'll be the first exception." That night, alone in her bakery kitchen, Lily worked until 3 in the morning, kneading dough with more force than necessary. The rhythmic motion usually calmed her, but not tonight. Tonight, every punch into the elastic dough was Blake Harrison's face. Every twist was his cold dismissal. Every rise was her own helpless fury. She'd grown up in Snowridge Falls. Her grandmother had opened Dawson's Sweet Haven in 1962, and her mother had run it until cancer took her 5 years ago. Lily had promised at her mother's bedside that she'd keep the bakery alive, keep the traditions alive, keep the magic of Christmas alive in their little corner of the world. And now some billionaire who'd probably never wanted for anything in his entire privileged life thought he could take it all away with a signature and a check. The bell above her front door chimed. Lily looked up, startled. It was past midnight. She hadn't locked the door yet, too distracted by her thoughts, but who would be out this late? Blake Harrison stood in her doorway, snowflakes melting on his expensive coat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lily's hands were covered in flour, her apron stained with butter and chocolate. She probably looked like a mess, hair falling out of its bun, dark circles under her eyes. He looked exactly the same as he had hours ago, perfectly composed, perfectly cold. "We are closed," she said finally. "Your lights were on. So you thought you'd come rub your victory in my face personally. That's a new level of petty, even for a billionaire." Blake stepped further inside, and Lily noticed he was alone. No security, no lawyers, no buffer between them. He looked around the bakery with an expression she couldn't quite read, taking in the vintage cash register, the hand-painted signs, the photos on the walls showing 3 generations of Dawsons serving the community. "This is where you spend your time," he said. It wasn't quite a question. "This is where I spend my life. There's a difference, but I wouldn't expect you to understand it." He moved to the counter where she'd been working. "What are you making?" "Gingerbread, for a Christmas that apparently isn't happening anymore, so I don't know why I'm bothering." Lily wiped her hands on her apron. "What do you want, Mr. Harrison? Come to make sure I understood your message." "I wanted to see who you were, the woman brave enough or foolish enough to challenge me publicly." "And what's the verdict?" Blake's eyes settled on hers, and for just a second she thought she saw something beneath the ice, something human. But then it was gone, locked away behind walls that probably took years to build. "I think you're fighting a battle you can't win," he said. "I think you're going to exhaust yourself trying to save something that's already dead, and I think you're going to take down good people with you when you finally fail." The words hit harder because they echoed her own deepest fears. "Get out of my bakery." "Miss Dawson." "Get out." She grabbed a rolling pin, brandishing it like a weapon. "You've taken our festival, our livelihood, our Christmas. You don't get to take my dignity too. So get out of my bakery, get out of my town, and take your soulless corporate destruction somewhere else." Blake stared at her for a long moment, and something complicated passed over his face. Then he turned and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I hope you prove me wrong." Then he was gone, leaving Lily alone with her gingerbread and her rage and the terrible, creeping doubt that maybe he was right. The next morning, Lily rallied the town. They met at the church, every business owner, every parent, every person who'd ever loved the Snowridge Falls Christmas festival. The energy was different than the night before. Word had spread about Lily's confrontation with Blake Harrison, both at town hall and later at her bakery. She'd become a symbol of resistance, whether she wanted to be or not. "We start with lights," Lily announced, standing in front of the assembled group. "Every house, every shop that's on private property, he can't stop us from decorating our own buildings. We turn Main Street into Christmas, with or without the official festival." "What about the market?" Sarah Henderson asked, cradling one of her newborn twins. "We need the vendor fees." "We'll set up in the church parking lot." Father Michael already agreed. "It's not as central, but it's something." "And the tree lighting," someone called out. "That's been tradition for 60 years. We'll move it to the park near the elementary school. Public property. He can't cancel a community gathering there." They worked through logistics for 2 hours, everyone contributing ideas, everyone refusing to let Blake Harrison's money win. By the time they adjourned, Snowridge Falls had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Over the next week, something remarkable happened. The town transformed into an act of defiance. Christmas lights appeared on every building, so many that Main Street glowed like a constellation had descended to Earth. Wreaths hung on every door, garland wrapped around every lamppost on private property. Someone printed T-shirts that said, "You can't buy our Christmas," and they sold out in a day. Lily worked 18-hour days, coordinating volunteers, baking for the unofficial market, keeping spirits high even when her own were faltering. The bakery stayed open late, becoming an informal headquarters for the resistance. She ran on coffee and spite and the desperate hope that community could triumph over capital. Blake Harrison watched it all from his temporary office in the old mill building on the edge of town. He'd bought that too, of course. Bought it years ago as part of a larger acquisition, then forgotten about it until he needed a base of operations in Snowridge Falls. Now he stood at the window, looking down at the town that hated him and wondered why he couldn't just leave. The festival cancellation was complete. The legal work was done. He could return to New York, to his penthouse and his next acquisition, to the life he'd built on the ruins of sentiment and weakness. That's what his father had called it in the years before the accident. Sentiment, weakness. But he stayed. He told himself it was due diligence, making sure the town didn't find some legal loophole to reinstate the festival. He told himself he needed to monitor the situation, protect his investment. He told himself a lot of things that weren't quite true. The truth was Lily Dawson. He thought about her constantly, which was absurd and irritating. Thought about the fire in her eyes when she'd confronted him. Thought about her flower-covered hands and the way she'd looked at him like he was something less than human. Thought about the way her entire being radiated warmth in a world he'd spent 15 years making cold. Mr. Harrison, his assistant, Jennifer, appeared in the doorway. The development team wants to know when to start demolition on the festival grounds. Blake turned from the window, put it on hold. "So?" "I said put it on hold, indefinitely." Jennifer's eyebrows rose, but she was too professional to question him. "Of course, anything else. Find out everything you can about Dawson's Sweet Haven. Financial records, lease agreements, everything." "The bakery." "Yes, the bakery." After Jennifer left, Blake returned to the window. Below, he could see Lily walking down Main Street, stopping to talk to shop owners, helping an elderly woman carry groceries, pausing to fix a strand of lights that had come loose. She moved through the town like a force of nature, holding everything together through sheer will. She reminded him of someone. It took him 3 days to realize who. His mother. The memory arrived without warning, sharp and painful as a knife between the ribs. His mother, laughing as she decorated their house in Connecticut, turning their home into a Christmas wonderland. His father, corporate and cold, watching with barely disguised disdain. The fights about money, about tradition, about what mattered. The final fight, Christmas Eve, his mother insisting they drive to his grandmother's despite the storm, his father angry about the waste of time. The crash, the twisted metal, the silence after. Blake pressed his forehead against the cold glass, forcing the memory away. He'd learned not to feel, learned that attachment led to pain, learned that the only things you could trust in this world were money and power and control. He'd built an empire on those principles. He'd buried his grief under them. But Lily Dawson was digging it up, piece by piece, whether she knew it or not. That night, strange things started happening in Snow Ridge Falls. The elementary school's outdated heating system, which had been failing for weeks, was mysteriously repaired. The invoice showed payment in full, but no one could trace who'd authorized it. The Hendersons found an envelope in their mailbox containing enough cash to cover 3 months of medical bills, no note attached. Old Man Chen's hardware store received an anonymous order for $10,000 worth of supplies, delivery to local families who couldn't afford winter repairs. And every morning, Lily found a white box on her bakery doorstep containing a single pastry from her own shop, always her favorite kind, always perfectly fresh. It took her 5 days to figure out what was happening. She was closing the bakery one evening when she saw a figure in a dark coat placing a box by her door. The streetlights weren't bright enough to identify him, but she didn't need light to recognize the way he moved, the set of his shoulders, the calculated grace of someone used to owning every space he entered. Lily grabbed her coat and ran outside. Blake Harrison. He froze, caught, then turned slowly. In the dim light, he looked different, less like a corporate predator, more like a man, just a man standing in the snow, holding a box of pastries. "It's you," she said, breathless from the cold and the run and the sudden confusion. "You've been leaving these. Why?" Blake didn't answer immediately. Snow fell between them, soft and silent, covering the world in white. Finally, he said, "Because you work too hard, you forget to eat. Someone needed to make sure you were taking care of yourself." And the heating system at the school, the Hendersons' medical bills, Old Man Chen's supplies. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're a terrible liar." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, so brief she almost missed it. "I'm an excellent liar, I just choose not to lie to you." Lily moved closer, studying his face in the streetlight's glow. "Why are you doing this? You cancelled our Christmas. You're supposed to be the villain of this story." "Maybe I'm tired of being the villain." "Then give us back the festival." The vulnerability in his expression vanished, replaced by familiar ice. "I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" "Both, neither. It's complicated, Miss Dawson." "Lily," she said softly, "if you're going to secretly save my town while publicly destroying it, you should at least call me Lily." Something in her tone made him look at her differently, really look at her, and Lily felt the moment shift between them. The air seemed to thicken, charged with something electric and dangerous. She should step back. She should take the pastry box and thank him and go inside where it was safe. She didn't move. "Why do you hate Christmas?" she asked instead. "What happened to you?" Blake's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business." "Maybe not, but I've spent the last 2 weeks fighting you, and I've realized something. You're not cruel. Cruel people don't anonymously pay for children's winter coats. They don't fix heating systems or leave pastries on doorsteps. So if you're not cruel, why are you doing something cruel?" "You don't know me, Lily." The way he said her name, rough and careful at the same time, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Then tell me, help me understand." For a moment she thought he might. His walls seemed to crack, just slightly, and she glimpsed the pain underneath. But then he handed her the pastry box and stepped back. "Go inside, it's cold." "Blake, please." The words sounded like it cost him something. Lily took the box, her fingers brushing his for a brief second, and felt him flinch at the contact, not with disgust, with something else, something that looked almost like fear. "Thank you," she said, "for the pastries, for everything else you won't admit to doing." He nodded once, then walked away, disappearing into the snow-covered streets. Lily stood outside her bakery for a long time, holding the box, trying to understand the most confusing man she'd ever met. A man who stole Christmas but gave everything else. A man built of contradictions and walls and wounds he couldn't talk about. A man she was dangerously close to caring about. The next morning, Lily found Mrs. Patterson crying in the bakery. "What's wrong?" Lily rushed around the counter, getting the elderly woman to a chair. "It's the house," Mrs. Patterson sobbed. "Our house, we're being evicted. The bank sold our mortgage to some company, and now they want us out by January 1st, right after Christmas. After 40 years in that house, they're throwing us out." Cold dread settled in Lily's stomach. "What company?" "I don't remember the name. Something with Harrison in it, I think." "Of course." Lily left the bakery in Sarah's care and marched straight to the old mill building. She'd avoided confronting Blake since their conversation in the snow, confused by her own conflicting feelings. But this was different. This was too far. His assistant tried to stop her. "Mr. Harrison is in a meeting." "I don't care if he's in a meeting with God himself." Lily pushed past, throwing open the conference room door. Blake sat at the head of a long table surrounded by men in suits. He looked up, startled, then dismissed the room with a wave of his hand. The lawyers filed out, giving Lily worried glances. When they were alone, Blake stood. "Lily, what?" "The Pattersons, really, you're going after the Pattersons now." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That's a separate business matter." "Everything with you is a separate business matter. Do you know that Mr. Patterson has early-stage Alzheimer's? Do you know that his wife has been caring for him alone because they can't afford help? Do you know that their son died in Afghanistan and that house is the only place they have left that holds his memory?" "I didn't know that." "Of course you didn't. Because you don't see people, Blake. You see numbers and properties and opportunities. You see everything except what matters." Blake walked to the window, his back to her, hands clenched at his sides. "What do you want me to do, Lily? I can't save everyone. I can't fix every problem in this town." "Then stop creating new ones. Stop playing God with people's lives." He spun to face her, and she was shocked to see genuine anguish in his eyes. "You think I want this? You think I enjoy being the villain in everyone's story? Then stop being the villain." "I don't know how." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Blake looked as surprised as Lily felt that he'd said it out loud. He turned away again, composing himself with visible effort. "My parents died on Christmas Eve," he said quietly. "I was 12. We were driving through a storm to my grandmother's house. My mother insisted we go despite the weather. My father was angry about it. They were fighting when a truck jackknifed in front of us." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading a report. "My mother died on impact. My father lived for 3 days. Do you know what his last words to me were?" Lily couldn't speak. "Never let sentiment make your decisions." That was it. Not "I love you," not "take care of yourself." Just a final piece of business advice from a man who turned his heart into a spreadsheet. Blake's hands were shaking. "So I became exactly what he wanted. No sentiment, no weakness, no Christmas. I built an empire on being everything he taught me to be, and I thought that would be enough. I thought it would make the pain stop." "But it didn't," Lily said softly. "No, it just made me numb." She moved toward him slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "Blake, what happened to your parents wasn't your fault, and it wasn't Christmas's fault. I know that, intellectually I know that." He looked at her, and his eyes were devastated. "But every Christmas, I'm 12 years old again, sitting in a hospital waiting room, covered in my mother's blood, listening to a doctor tell me I'm alone. Every carol, every light, every decoration pulls me back to that moment. So I did the only thing I could think of. I tried to erase it. By erasing everyone else's Christmas too." I thought if I could eliminate it, control it, monetize it, then it wouldn't have power over me anymore. He laughed bitterly. How's that for rational thinking? Lily reached out and took his hand. He stiffened but didn't pull away. His fingers were cold. You're not trying to destroy Christmas, she said. You're trying to destroy grief, but that's not how grief works, Blake. You can't cancel it or control it. You can only feel it and let it pass through you. I don't want to feel it. I know, but you're doing it anyway, whether you admit it or not. Every anonymous good deed, every secret kindness, every pastry left on my doorstep. That's grief too, Blake. It's just grief turning itself into love instead of destruction. He looked down at their joined hands like he couldn't quite believe they were real. What if I don't know how to stop? What if I've broken something that can't be fixed? Then we fix it together. Lily squeezed his hand, starting with the Pattersons. Blake nodded slowly, then so quietly she almost missed it. And the festival. And the festival. I'd have to look weak, admit I was wrong publicly. You'd have to be human publicly. There's a difference. For the first time since she'd known him, Blake Harrison smiled, really smiled, with warmth that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. You're terrifying, you know that. I've been told. He called his legal team back in, and with Lily standing beside him, dismantled his own empire piece by piece. The Patterson mortgage was returned to their original bank at the original terms. The anonymous donations were formalized through a charitable trust. And the festival, the Snow Ridge Falls Christmas Festival that he'd tried so hard to destroy, was restored with full funding and a permanent endowment to ensure it would survive for generations. But Blake wasn't finished. 3 days before Christmas, he gathered the entire town in the square where the festival had always been held. Lily stood next to him, her hand in his, watching the confused faces of her neighbors. Blake had refused to tell her what he'd planned, just asked her to trust him. She did, surprisingly. Somewhere between their fight and his confession, trust had snuck in. Blake cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the attention. He was better with boardrooms than town squares, better with contracts than confessions, but he'd promised Lily he would try. 15 years ago, he began, I lost my parents on Christmas Eve. For 15 years, I've blamed Christmas for that loss. I've spent my life trying to control everything, eliminate anything that reminded me of pain, turn the world into something predictable and safe. And in doing that, I became someone I don't recognize anymore, someone my mother wouldn't recognize. His voice cracked slightly, and Lily squeezed his hand. I came to Snow Ridge Falls to cancel your festival because I thought I could cancel my own memories, but I met someone who showed me that Christmas isn't about pain. It's about love, about community, about the way people take care of each other even when times are hard. He looked at Lily, and the tenderness in his expression made her breath catch. She reminded me what it means to be human. Blake turned back to the crowd. So I'm doing something I should have done 15 years ago. I'm honoring my parents by celebrating what they loved, not by running from it. And I'm dedicating this festival permanently to George and Catherine Harrison. This will be their memorial, a reminder that love persists even after loss, that joy can coexist with grief, that Christmas survives. The crowd was silent, stunned. Then Mrs. Patterson started clapping, then Sarah Henderson, then one by one, the entire town erupted in applause, not because Blake had given them back their festival, though they were grateful for that, but because he'd given them something more valuable, his truth. Father Michael stepped forward with a box of white candles, and understanding rippled through the crowd. One by one, people took candles and lit them from each other, passing the light person to person until the entire square glowed. It was beautiful and spontaneous, and exactly the kind of thing Lily loved about Snow Ridge Falls. Blake stared at the lights, transfixed. Lily saw his eyes fill with tears, saw him finally let himself feel everything he'd been running from. She wrapped her arms around him, and he buried his face in her shoulder, his body shaking with silent sobs. It's okay, she whispered. You're okay, they'd be proud of you. They stood like that for a long time, surrounded by candlelight and community. While Blake Harrison finally let himself grieve properly for the first time in 15 years. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and clear skies. The Snowridge Falls Christmas Festival was the biggest and most beautiful it had ever been. Blake had spared no expense, transforming the town square into a winter wonderland. The tree was massive, decorated with thousands of white lights and topped with a star that could be seen from miles away. Vendors lined the streets, selling hot chocolate and roasted chestnuts and handmade crafts. Carolers sang on every corner. Children ran through the snow, shrieking with delight. And at the center of it all stood a simple memorial. 2 park benches facing the tree, with a bronze plaque that read, "In memory of George and Catherine Harrison, who believed in the magic of Christmas." Lily found Blake sitting on one of the benches, alone in the midst of the celebration, staring up at the tree. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside him. "You okay?" "I am actually," he sounded surprised by it. "I keep waiting for the pain to come, for the panic, for the need to run, but all I feel is peace." "Your mother would love this." She really would. She always wanted Christmas to be magical. She used to say that Christmas was God's reminder that light always returns, even in the darkest winter. Blake looked at Lily, and his smile was genuine and warm and completely unguarded. "I think she'd like you." "Yes. She'd say you were exactly the kind of stubborn, brave, impossible person I needed." Lily laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is." Blake took her hand, threading their fingers together. "I'm staying, you know, in Snowridge Falls. I'm not going back to New York." Lily's heart skipped. "What about your company?" "I'll manage remotely, or sell it, or burn it down, honestly. I've spent my whole life building an empire I don't even like. Maybe it's time to build something else, something real." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. Maybe a foundation that helps small towns stay alive. Maybe a bakery if the owner will teach me how to make gingerbread." He grinned at her shocked expression. "I'm a fast learner." "You want to work in my bakery?" "I want to work anywhere you are. I want to learn who I am when I'm not running. I want to remember how to be human." Blake cupped her face gently. "I want to see if this thing between us is real or just the magic of Christmas making us both a little crazy." "I'm pretty sure it's both," Lily admitted. "Good, I can work with both." He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise, while around them, the town they'd saved together celebrated. Children laughed, carolers sang, snow fell in gentle spirals. It was magic, real Christmas magic, the kind that couldn't be bought or cancelled or controlled. The kind that could only be felt. When they finally pulled apart, Lily noticed people watching them with delighted grins. She rolled her eyes. "We're going to be the town gossip for months." "I've been called worse things." "True, remember when I called you a monster?" "One of my favorite moments, actually, right up there with you threatening me with a rolling pin." "I should have hit you with it." "You should have." Blake stood, pulling her to her feet. "Dance with me? I haven't danced in 15 years, so I'll probably step on your feet, but I'd like to try." Lily let him lead her into the square, where others were dancing to a string quartet's rendition of Christmas classics. Blake was right. He was a terrible dancer, stiff and uncertain, but he was trying, and that meant everything. "Thank you," he said as they swayed together, "for not giving up on me, for fighting me even when it was pointless, for showing me there was something worth coming back to. Thank you for letting me in, for being brave enough to feel things again, for choosing love over fear." Lily rested her head on his shoulder. "Your parents would be so proud, Blake, not of the billionaire, of the man who bought Christmas and then gave it back." Around them, Snowridge Falls glowed with light and life and joy. The town that almost died had been saved, not by money or power, but by one stubborn baker who refused to let Christmas die, and one broken billionaire who learned that some things can't be bought or controlled, only felt and shared and treasured. As midnight approached, Father Michael called everyone to gather around the tree. It was tradition to count down to Christmas together, the entire town united. Blake hesitated, old fears rising, but Lily took his hand and pulled him forward. They counted down together, hundreds of voices in harmony, and when they reached 0, the tree blazed to life in a cascade of colors. Blake stared up at it, tears streaming freely down his face now, but smiling through them. "Merry Christmas, Blake," Lily whispered. He pulled her close, holding her like she was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. "Merry Christmas, Lily. Thank you for giving me my life back." And in that moment, surrounded by community and light, Blake Harrison was finally home. The bakery opened late on Christmas morning. Lily had meant to get there early to start preparations for the Christmas Day rush, but she'd stayed up too late at the festival with Blake, talking and laughing and planning a future that felt impossibly bright. So she was half asleep and running behind when she finally unlocked the bakery door, only to find Blake already inside, covered in flour, attempting to make gingerbread. "How did you get in?" she asked, laughing at the disaster that was her kitchen. "I may have asked Father Michael for the spare key." Blake gestured helplessly at the counter. "I wanted to surprise you, but I think I'm doing it wrong." "You think?" Lily surveyed the carnage. Flour everywhere, eggs on the floor, what looked like an entire bag of sugar spilled across the workspace. "What were you even trying to make?" "Gingerbread, your recipe. I found it in the notebook you keep by the mixer. I thought if I could make it, I could prove I'm capable of building something instead of just destroying things." The vulnerability in his voice made Lily's chest ache. She moved behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You've already proven that, the festival, the memorial, choosing to stay. You've built so much already. But I want to build this too. I want to learn your world, Lily, not just watch it from outside." She pressed a kiss to his shoulder blade. "Then let's start with something easier than gingerbread. How are you at decorating sugar cookies?" They spent Christmas morning in the bakery, teaching Blake the basics of baking. He was comically bad at it, heavy-handed with the frosting and incapable of creating symmetrical shapes. But he tried with such earnest determination that Lily fell a little more in love with him with every misshapen cookie. Around noon, people started arriving, not for purchases, but for community. It was tradition in Snowridge Falls that the bakery was open Christmas Day for anyone who needed somewhere to go, and Lily had never charged for food on Christmas. Blake watched in amazement as the small shop filled with neighbors, with families, with people who'd lost loved ones and didn't want to be alone. "You do this every year?" he asked, as Lily handed out cookies and hot chocolate to everyone who entered. "Every year since my mom died. Christmas is hardest for the people who have lost someone. I wanted them to have somewhere to go where they'd be welcomed." Blake looked around at the gathered people, at the warmth and acceptance and simple human kindness that filled the space. "Your mother would be proud. I think both our mothers would be proud of us today." He kissed her forehead. "Can I help?" "You can pour hot chocolate, but please don't spill anything else. I'm not sure the kitchen can handle more destruction." Blake laughed, actually laughed, bright and genuine, and Lily thought she'd never heard a more beautiful sound. They worked side by side all afternoon, serving the community, listening to stories, providing comfort. Mayor Griffin stopped by with his grandchildren. Sarah Henderson brought the twins. Old Man Chen shared memories of Christmases past. Even Mrs. Patterson came, bringing cookies she'd made with her husband, who was having a good day despite the Alzheimer's. As the sun set and people began to leave, thanking Lily and Blake for their hospitality, Blake pulled Lily into the kitchen. "I have something for you," he said nervously. "I know we've only known each other a few weeks, and this might be too much, but I couldn't help myself." He handed her an envelope. Inside were legal documents, complex and dense, but Lily's eyes caught on the important parts: full ownership of the bakery building transferred to her name. No mortgage, no rent, just hers permanently. "Blake, I can't." "You can, you should. This place is your heart, Lily. It's where your family's legacy lives. You shouldn't have to worry about losing it." He touched her face gently. "Let me do this. Let me protect something precious instead of destroying it." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "This is too much." "It's not enough. It will never be enough to thank you for what you've given me." Blake's voice broke slightly. "You gave me back my life, Lily. You gave me hope and purpose and the courage to feel again. a building doesn't come close to balancing that debt. She set the papers aside and pulled him down for a kiss, deep and long and full of everything she couldn't put into words. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lily whispered, "Merry Christmas, Blake Harrison, welcome home." "Home," he repeated like he was testing the word, then smiled. "Yeah, home." Outside, snow began to fall again, covering Snowridge Falls in fresh white. The festival lights still glowed in the square. Carols still played from the church. And in the bakery on Main Street, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way held each other close, grateful for second chances and new beginnings and the magic that only Christmas can bring. The billionaire who bought Christmas had learned something money could never teach, that the greatest gifts can't be purchased or controlled or quantified. They can only be given freely, received with grace, and treasured with grateful hearts. And that some things, the most important things, are worth more than any empire ever built. If you loved this story of redemption, love, and Christmas magic, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite moment from Blake and Lily's journey, and don't forget to like this video to help others discover this story. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to change, to choose love over fear, and to find your way home. Merry Christmas, and thank you for being part of our community. Christmas Red.